my name is Anna Taylor and I'm a rock climber. I live in Windermere, which is in the middle of the Lake District, really popular climbing area of the UK. And I've just got back from what I've called the Classic Rock Tour, which is a link-up of 83 really classic rock climbs in the UK, going between them by bicycle.
Oh my God, it's just incredible. Like, I mean, I know I got so overexcited when I first started to speak to you. It's just such an amazing achievement. Like, can you believe that you completed it?
I'm still trying to process it, I think. Yeah, because it took such a long time. It took 2 months in the end. And certainly over the first few days, there was a lot of moments where I was finding it hard already and just realizing how much there was to go. I sort of couldn't really visualize ever finishing. So to have finally got it, yeah, it feels pretty good.
Oh, massive, massive, massive congratulations. And obviously we're going to be talking in detail about the Classic Rock Tour. But one of the things that I always find fascinating is just finding out a little bit more about sort of who you are in terms of, what was your childhood like? Did you grow up in Windermere? Were you swimming in the lake? Were you climbing, doing the rock climbing from a young age?
So my childhood, it was pretty good. I've lived in Windermere my entire life. I was brought up in the Lake District and I've always been in quite an outdoorsy family. My parents got me into not just climbing, but loads of outdoor activities really from a very young age. So like kayaking and fell running, and a bit of climbing as well. I started climbing properly when I was about 10, just for my dad taking me to the local climbing wall. But I've definitely spent a lot of time in the mountains around here since being very little.
So when did you start thinking about this challenge? Where did the idea for the challenge come from?
The idea for the challenge kind of came about purely because obviously with everything that's been happening over the last couple of years with COVID and all that, I wanted to go on a big climbing trip after lockdown, but it just didn't really feel like the right time to be going abroad or doing anything like that. So I wanted something UK based, and I'd had a go at doing all the classic rock routes just in the Lake District on the run at one point, and that was a really fun day out. And I kind of just thought, why not do all of them?
So how did the cycling come into it? So like, because I can see like wanting to do the climbing, but to add the cycling in as well just adds like a whole new different element, a whole new challenge to it.
Sure. Well, I wanted it to feel more like a climbing expedition than just like a normal trip. So I thought if you added the cycling, then all of it suddenly becomes quite hard. And I've always wanted to try cycle touring. It's not something I'd ever done before, but it always kind of appealed, like just being able to go around on your bike with all your tent and your camping stuff with you. And I thought, it would just work really well.
So you'd never done cycle touring before either? Sorry, not
no,
either.
Never.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so you've got this idea. You're wanting to do this classic rock tour. You're going to cycle in between. It's 83 climbs, UK based, absolutely fantastic. So people do have these dreams and these ambitions. And I always find it fascinating how people go from having the idea to actually taking that first step and setting the start date. Could you talk us through that sort of period of how things came together, what was involved in your planning and preparation?
Well, I kind of came up with the idea. It would have been in probably March or April 2020, I think. So over a year ago now. Just again, as I was saying, as kind of the lockdowns were kicking off and I was trying to come up with a plan for the future. And it kind of worked out all that because we were all stuck inside for such a long time. I didn't really have anything to do but sort of plan all the logistics, and it took a long time to work out exactly how it was all going to work in terms of where the route was going to be, where I was going to start, where I was going to finish, the logistics of just all the stuff I was going to need and how the cycle touring element was going to work and how I was going to get any sort of photo or video content as I went. And it was a long process, but bit by bit, it just all came together. And then I started talking to a few friends about it and sort of testing the waters to see if they thought it was a good idea or not. And amazingly, most of them did think it was a good idea. So that kind of got me a little bit more confident in deciding to announce to the world that I was actually going to start. And I originally wanted to do it in April of this year, but we still weren't quite out of the lockdowns. So I moved it back to starting in August, which gave me kind of roughly, I thought, about 2 months to get it done before we got too far into October. And up in Scotland, the daylight hours get a lot shorter and it gets a lot colder. And yeah, I mean, as we're in the summer this year, and I just thought it was time.
I mean, talking of time, that's actually generally one of the biggest issues that people have, is being able to take the time off. So, taking off a 2-month trip. I mean, are you working? Are you studying? How did you manage to take that time off?
Well, I work as, I don't want to say professional climber because I don't necessarily get paid just to go climbing, but everything I do in my work life is to do with climbing. I don't really have a specific set job, but I do quite a lot of different stuff. I work with the outdoor brand Berghaus quite a lot, and I recently got into doing a little bit of TV work here and there. So my jobs they're kind of all over the place, and I'm lucky in the sense that I can kind of book a 2-month slot out of my life at the moment and do something like this.
Let's also talk about the second big thing after time is generally money. I mean, did you have a budget? Did you know how much this was going to cost? Like, did you have savings? Were you able to get sponsorship? You mentioned that you work with Berghaus. Were they able to sponsor you? Talk to us about the money and paying for this challenge.
Well, I am sponsored by Berghaus as an athlete anyway, which is great. And they were willing to put a little bit of funding towards this trip. But the good thing about this was it wasn't an expensive trip because it's UK based. It's not like I was flying anywhere or, having to ship a load of equipment across an ocean or anything like that. I mean, I needed to get the train down to Penzance to start and get it home again. But aside from that, I mean, really, it was just getting enough money to buy food along the way. There wasn't really any other expense to deal with.
And were you going to be camping along the way?
Yeah, so I camped the whole way, basically, apart from we did get one Airbnb in Bristol because I didn't much fancy wild camping in the middle of a city. But yeah, otherwise camping stuff on the back of the bike and then either at campsites or just wild camping wherever I could.
I mean, actually, you've nailed like the 4 costs. It's the costs of getting to and from the start and the finish. It's the gear. If you don't already have the gear already, then that's obviously an added cost. But obviously, you're in the climbing world, so you've got all of the climbing gear and the bike and everything. And then when you are on the road, it is pretty cheap, especially if you're wild camping or camping out, then accommodation is, from like £5 or £10 if you're UK based for a campsite roughly. And then it is just food. And I think that, the biggest challenge I find is trying not to stop everywhere and have like hot chocolates or pub meals. And it's like, no, just get resupply from the supermarket. You can do that.
Yeah, I completely understand that feeling, particularly when you're really tired, right? And it's so easy just to go into a pub or something like that. But it adds up, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. So, the other thing you mentioned is wanting to get sort of, to film it, to get photos, because you partnered up with somebody who was going to do that for you. Talk me through that partnership and how that worked.
So the first part of the challenge, the first, nearly month actually, I did with a friend of mine called Mark Langley, who's a professional adventure photographer. And he was actually cycling with me at the start. He got a little bit injured quite early on, so he didn't continue doing that. But he was with me for, as I said, the first month. And he had the job of basically sort of running around these crags with his camera and trying to get some video footage and decent photos, which he did an amazing job of. Particularly, we got quite unlucky with the weather in Wales. So trying to get good photos in between the cloud and the mist and the rain was, I think, quite a task. And then after that, I was on my own for quite a bit, probably at least 3 weeks up in Scotland. But I partnered up with another one of my friends, Neil Gresham, who's a professional climber, and he partnered me for the last few climbs up on Skye.
Let's go back to the start. So you've got all your gear together, you're on the train. I think you said to Penzance, is that right?
Yeah, that's right on. Yeah.
Take us down to the start. Oh my God, I'm getting so excited. It's like breathe. Okay. So what was it like being at the start, heading off on this challenge? How are you feeling? What was going through your head?
It was quite overwhelming, I think, really. Yeah, just because there were so many unknowns coming into this. Because, like I said, I mean, I know how to climb, but I didn't really know how to cycle tour. So that was something I was going to have to work out how to do sort of on the fly. And I was cycling with all my climbing equipment, so with a rope and basically a big bag of metal, which is traditional climbing gear. And it's quite heavy, and I knew that that was going to make the cycling part of things a lot more difficult. I wasn't quite sure how much more difficult. So there was all that to think about. And then I'd sort of made a rough schedule of what I hoped I could do in a day. But then again, I didn't know if I was going to be able to stick to it or not. And then a lot of the climbs as well, I was planning to do most of them solo. So without any ropes or gear or a partner or anything like that, which they're not the hardest climbs in the world. They're actually, in the grand scheme of things, quite easy grades. But there's 83 of them, and some of them, certainly in bad conditions, I was a bit scared of doing basically on my own. So yeah, there was a lot to think about, but it was very exciting. Obviously, you're setting off on a big adventure. But just knowing how much there was to come was, intimidating, I think, is the right word.
How did you deal with that intimidation, but also maybe when the reality set in, when when you're out there now, you've set yourself this massive challenge, these 83 climbs, cycling in between. You're dealing with the UK weather, which is unpredictable and crazy at the best of times. What did you do when reality struck?
I think the way I usually deal with stuff like this is just basically to take it one day at a time and one challenge at a time. I went out to Guyana a couple of years ago on this big expedition with a few friends of mine, and that was a really weird sort of alien experience. It was like nothing I'd ever done before. And once I'd sort of committed to it and got out there, it was a similar thing. The sort of reality of what was to come kind of set in, and looking at the whole thing was just too much, basically. But I found that if I sort of took it day by day, and broke everything down into just little chunks, and you just deal with what's in front of you and you don't think too far ahead, for me at least, that seems to work a lot better.
What was the biggest challenge for you on this trip?
I think the biggest challenge was probably the Scottish climbs, because they're a lot bigger, they're a lot scarier, and they're a lot more remote than any of the other rock climbs on this round. And originally I didn't really want to solo climb any of them, just because some particularly I knew by reputation as being pretty scary, or having a lot of loose rock and sort of unpredictable conditions. But I ended up there on my own without a partner, and I'm really glad that happened in the end, because soloing some of these routes was really, really great experience. But getting into that section of the trip on my own, and knowing how much there was to do was definitely quite scary.
I mean, when you are on like a rock face alone, solo, what is going through your head?
I think normally what's going through my head is just, if it's going well, I'm purely focusing just on what's in front of me, and getting to either the top of the wall or the top of the next pitch. It's not an adrenaline rush at all. Usually if I'm feeling any sort of adrenaline, that means things are starting to go wrong. If you're soloing, it's often quite a calming feeling almost, because you've just got to banish all those thoughts of fear and worries about the exposure and the rock or anything. You just need to get them out of your head and concentrate purely on climbing and making sure that you stay on the right route. So it's if it goes well, it's quite a peaceful feeling, but you certainly appreciate where you are.
I'd love for you to share maybe a couple of those magical moments while you were out on the trip, which just made you smile, brought joy into your life, and you think back now and you're just like, do you know what, that was just epic.
I think the main one for me was there's a climb up on Ben Nevis called the Long Climb. It's up on the North Face, and it's it's kind of in the name, it's quite a big climb. It's about 450 meters, I think, which in terms of cliffs in the UK, it's probably one of the biggest. And I'd heard some bad reports on this climb. I'd heard that it was hard to sort of find where the route went. I heard that the rock was quite loose and sort of prone to breaking. And just heard that it was quite a scary lead, even with a partner, I sort of found myself up there one day with some of these climbs I what's called rope soloed. So I was up there on my own, but I did have some kit with me to make it a little bit safer. And that's how I chose to do the long climb. But it was just it was a really cool experience because I went up the first few pitches and it wasn't the best weather day in the world. It wasn't raining, but there was a lot of mist. And the mist was kind of all around me, so I couldn't actually see the top of the cliff, but I couldn't see the ground either. So I was kind of just in this little bubble. And I think it's one of those situations that before I started this trip would have scared the hell out of me. But the whole trip up to that point had almost been an apprenticeship at getting good at that sort of thing. And yeah, it was topping out was just amazing. And I kind of felt like instead of relief that the climb was over, that I almost wanted it to just continue and climb more. So I think that was definitely one of the best moments for me.
What was the toll like on your body? You know, it's intense, especially, you know, from the sounds of the weight of your bike and carrying all the gear and everything, and 2 months camping, sleeping in your tent. How did your body adapt and cope with the physicality of doing a challenge like this?
I think actually better than I expected in the long run. And the first week was really, really hellish, just getting used to cycling every day and cycling with all that weight. The first few days, I didn't manage to do the amount of mileage that I originally set myself, and I had to catch up in the days that followed. But after sort of the end of week 2, I would say, I don't know what happened. I've heard this before from people that have done cycle tours, that after the second week, your body almost just gets into a rhythm. And then suddenly it's not that it's easy, but the amount of effort that you're putting in every day doesn't break you like it normally would. And I definitely found that on this trip. Of course, I mean, by the end, I was tired. One of the things with the Scottish climbs is the walk-ins to a lot of these cliffs are pretty big. Like there's, particularly in the Cairngorms, there's a couple of climbs where you've got to walk 9 miles from the road just to get to the cliff. And then you've got to walk 9 miles back out again and then get back on your bike. So it kind of got harder and harder and harder as I got closer towards the finish. But by that point, the end was at least in sight. So I could just sort of keep pushing through it. But I think all in all, it was, I don't think I suffered physically quite as much as I sort of expected I would.
I think it's true what you said about that sort of that 2-week time period. I think that's true or I've certainly experienced it myself for hiking. And when I've done like a big cycling trip, after a while, it's like your body's just like, oh, this is what we're doing today. Okay.
Yeah. And just like it gives in, isn't it? And it's like, all right, then you can keep doing this.
it accepts it and it just allows you to continue. So you mentioned that you initially, when you started the trip, you were with a friend called Mark, who was, you know, going to be doing the filming and taking photos and sort of be with you on the journey. How was it being with somebody else sort of as part of a team? Because I always think that there's a honeymoon period, maybe for the first 9-10 days, but then as the challenge goes on, maybe you get sort of more tired, more hangry, the weather, etc. You know, are you still friends?
Yeah, we are still friends, amazingly. I think it was a similar thing to what you were just saying. Yeah, the first week or so we got on super well and everything was great. And after that we did have our fallouts for sure. They were never over anything particularly bad. It was just when you're stuck together sort of 24/7 like that, living in a tent, and you're the only person that the other one's got to talk to, and you're both really, really tired. It's easy to irritate each other, basically. And yeah, I think actually in hindsight, we managed quite well, considering I've done trips before where it's been spending a long time with sort of a team of 3 or 4, but I've never actually done anything just one-on-one with somebody else. So yeah, it was an interesting experience, but I think we did pretty well. And we don't hate each other now, so that's got to be an achievement.
Oh, absolutely. So, could you roughly just sort of describe the route of where you went? So obviously, we know you started down in Penzance in Cornwall and then headed up to Scotland. What was roughly the direction, if people can imagine the UK? What could you sort of describe that route?
Sure. So from Penzance, we actually went downward for a little bit, all the way to Land's End, and then we came back up around the coast to the Dewstone, which is near Dartmoor, I think. And then back to the coast and out to Lundy Island. And then obviously got a ferry for that. And from there, went up into Wales through Snowdonia, and then sort of across to the Peak District, up through Yorkshire, into the Lake District where I live, through there, and then sort of up to Scotland. Oh, over to Arran as well, the Isle of Arran, and then sort of up past Loch Lomond into Glencoe, and then across the Cairngorms, and then all the way back across the country over to the Isle of Skye.
Oh, and what's the Isle of Skye like? Is that where you finished?
Yeah, well, I'd never been there. Well, I had been there before. I'd driven through it, but I'd never really spent any time there. And I was really looking forward to it because obviously I've seen pictures of how beautiful it is. And the round actually ended on the Coolin Ridge. That was the last. It's a bit funny that that's in there because it's not really a rock climb, but for some reason it is. And I thought that was going to be an incredible finale just with the views that I've seen on photos off either side of this ridge. But I got there and the weather was just horrific. Some of the worst that it had been for the entire trip. The whole sort of Coolin Hills were just clogged up with cloud and mist, and it was raining on and off constantly. And there wasn't really a good weather window in sight over the next week or so. So in the end, I just had to go for it in pretty bad conditions. So I'm yet to see any of the views on Skye. I don't really know what they're like. So I'll have to come back one day, I think.
Did you ever think that you weren't going to finish?
I think it kind of occurred to me in Wales because the day I arrived in the Penny Pass, which is it's near Llanberis in Snowdonia, which is an area where there's the majority of the Welsh climbs are. I got there and it started raining, and then for the next week it basically continued raining, and I never really got a good day of climbing conditions. And it was all right because the routes, they were fairly big, but not on the scale of the lakes and the Scottish climbs, and I could just about get away with them for the most part in the rain. But it definitely did occur to me that I couldn't really climb any harder than those routes in bad conditions. And if I started getting rain like that up in the Lake District and up in Scotland particularly, I just didn't know how I was going to do it. And also, Wales, I don't think it's even halfway through this round. So again, there was just still so much ahead of me. And it got pretty miserable down there with how much it was raining, and just never, all the climbs suddenly they stopped being enjoyable and they just became really, really scary because obviously you don't really want to be soloing in the rain. It's a pretty stupid thing to do in general. So yeah, it did occur to me then, but I was pretty determined because we'd cycled so far already to finish.
Yeah. What did you do to celebrate?
Not a lot really. It's just been nice getting home and kind of just enjoying the comforts of everyday life, I guess. Just being able to have a shower and eat normal food and drink coffee without having to get a stove out and boil it. Yeah, I haven't really had a proper celebration yet.
And that question that everybody hates, but what's next? Are you planning another adventure, or are you just taking some time out?
I'm not entirely sure what's next. I'd quite like to do something like this again, like incorporate cycle touring with climbing. But I think I'd like to do it somewhere sunnier, basically. So I'll have to have a think. And then I would like to maybe go somewhere overseas on a proper climbing trip sometime soon too.
Do you have some of the stats? Like, what was the total distance that you cycled, and do you know how much you climbed? Like, is that a stat that you would measure?
Oh, I'm not entirely, in terms of vertical meters of the climbing, I'm not sure. It is written down somewhere, but I can't quite remember what it is. But in terms of cycling, it was just over 1,500 miles for the whole round. So probably like 1,550 or something like that. So yeah, long enough.
Oh my God, that sounds it just sounds like incredible. And so, advice for women who want to get into climbing. For those who maybe are interested in the sport, want to know more about it, what's the best advice that you have for them?
I think if they're interested in climbing, probably the first thing to do is to start going to a climbing wall, particularly if you're not very confident on the gear side of things. They're a great place to meet people that you can, sort of pal up with and learn how to climb together, learn the ropes, if you will. And there's lots of really good climbing walls. Bouldering walls are popping up in most cities. There's loads down in Manchester. And when it comes to outdoor climbing, just take it slow, learn everything you need to do to keep yourself safe, and just go out and enjoy it, really.
Yeah. How did you work on improving your skills? Did you ever work with like a climbing coach? Was it just developed through practice, through climbing with others? Did you go on any courses? What would tell us a little bit more about your climbing journey?
Well, yeah, I never worked officially with a coach. I had the odd sort of coach session through the years, particularly when I was a young climber, sort of in my teens. But otherwise, I think the main way I've improved is just from climbing with people that are better than me. I've been quite lucky in that I have a lot of friends that are very, very strong climbers, and being able to learn from them has definitely improved me a lot.
So, Anna, I'd love for you to share, and maybe I probably should have asked you this question a little while ago, but do you just want to sort of describe what type of climbing that you do? Because I know I'm not a climber, so I don't know, but I know that there's probably a whole different variety of types of climbing. Do you just want to share a little bit more about the type of climbing that you do?
Yeah, so the type of climbing I do is called trad, or traditional climbing. And essentially, what that is, normally when you go into a climbing wall, you see these metal bolts drilled into the wall that have these things called quick draws on them, which are the carabiners that you clip your rope into. And you get that outside too on what people call sport cliffs. So you have metal bolts drilled into the rock face that you can use as protection points. And what trad climbing is basically means that none of that's there. And as you climb up, you put your own protection into the rock using these little metal devices called wires or cams. And essentially, they're like little blobs of metal that you can just stuff into cracks. And then, in theory, if you fall off, they should be able to take your weight. So it doesn't have to be dangerous at all. It can be extremely safe. On certain cliffs, it can get quite dangerous if the rock itself doesn't offer any opportunities to place that protection. And then the other style of climbing that I'm quite into is solo climbing, so climbing without any rope or any gear whatsoever, which again obviously can get quite dangerous because you really, really can't fall off. But I only do that on climbs that I am 100% sure that's not going to happen on.
And Anna, you are on social media on Instagram. Do you want to share a little bit more about a little bit more? Do you want to share? Do you want to share your handle where people can find out more about you and follow along?
Yeah, of course. So my Instagram handle is Anna_Taylor_98. And yeah, that's where I post a lot of my climbing related content.
Fantastic. And before we go, I'd love for you just to share a little bit more about your expedition to South America, which you did in 2019. Do you want to share more about that challenge and what was involved?
So that was a bit of a funny one, really, because essentially I got a message completely out of the blue one day from a climber called Leo Holding. And if you're a climber, he's pretty well known. He's been on the scene for quite a long time, and he's pretty good. He actually lives 10 minutes down the road from me, but at this point I'd never actually met him. But anyway, he messaged me and essentially was offering the chance to go on this expedition with him and his team to Guyana to go and climb this massive mountain in the Amazon jungle called Mount Roraima. And long story short, we met up, got to know each other a bit, and I agreed to go on this trip, on which I was the only woman. The other five were all guys and all considerably older than me. So that was quite intimidating at the start. But I knew it was an opportunity that I absolutely couldn't pass up. And yeah, so we headed over there and we were out in the jungle for nearly 5 weeks. It took us 2 weeks just to walk in, and a further 2 and a bit weeks on this wall. It was what's called a big wall in climbing terms, which means a rock face so big that it takes you days or even weeks to climb it. So you're living, eating, sleeping on the wall in these little hanging tents called portaledges. So yeah, that was it was an incredible experience. It's still, I think, the best thing I've ever done.
And what was sort of your role in that team?
And my role was a climber. So in the end, I actually got to climb the hardest pitch on the wall, which was great. There was 3 of us in the team that were the main climbers. Leo was one of them, and then a guy called Wilson Cutbirth, who's an American climber, was the other. And those 2 are incredible at what's called on-site climbing, which is climbing a pitch first go. And they were sort of questing up this big rock face, but they found this section that was really hard and they couldn't do it in that style. So they left it, and I spent quite a few days working on it and having to sort of rehearse the moves and rehearse the protection placements and all that stuff, and eventually got it done.
Woo! Yes! Oh my God, I love it. Reflecting back on some of these challenges that you've done from your expedition to Guyana in South America, and then obviously doing the classic rock tour, what do you think's been some of the key lessons that you've learned and that you've applied to other areas of your life?
I guess sort of resilience, really, and just the ability to stick at things. And, even if you're in a situation where everything in front of you appears to be going wrong and you can't feasibly think of a way out of it, usually the next day or the next week or something like that, you'll find a way. And probably that it's even when things are hard, it's worth sticking at them. I think that's the main lesson I've learned.
And I'd love for you to leave our listeners with your final words of advice, final words of wisdom to encourage other women to get outside, to get active, to explore more, to take on new challenges. What would you like to say to them?
Don't feel that you're in any way sort of inferior to guys, particularly in more male-dominated sports. We're just as capable as they are. If you want to do something, just go and do it. There's nothing stopping you.
Absolutely. Anna, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast and sharing more about your passion and love for climbing, and massive congratulations again on doing the classic rock tour. Just an incredible achievement, and I can't wait to see more of your future adventures and challenges.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Hey Tribe, I hope you enjoyed the episode with Anna Taylor. What an absolute inspiration. It is Christmas Day today, so Merry Christmas everybody, whether you're listening to it on Christmas Day or in the days, weeks, months, years even after Christmas Day 2021. Thank you so much for listening to the Tough Girl podcast. I really appreciate you. If you're brand new here, then let me introduce myself. My name is Sarah Williams. I'm the host of the Tough Girl podcast and the founder of Tough Girl Challenges, which is all about motivating and inspiring you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media. So we've got 2 more episodes left before the end of the year. On the 28th of December, we're going to be speaking with Gauri Varanasi. She's an environmental educator, climber, and founder of Climb Like a Woman, which is inspiring more women to climb in India. And on the 30th of December, we're speaking with Julie Villu, who is a Canadian adventurer for good, expeditions chief, horse trek Mongolia, and founder of the Gobi Gallop. What a way to end the year. And if you haven't listened to a few of our earlier episodes, then take a listen to Preeti Kashari. She's an engineer, trail runner, and founder of the trail running company Nepal Trail Series. Marcia Roberts came on the 16th of December. She was the first woman to record an official time for cycling 1,725 miles from Land's End to John O'Groats and back again. 18th of December, Anne Bancroft came on. She was the first woman to ski to both poles and lead the first all-women's expedition to the South Pole, and she's helping girls and women find their voice and potential in whatever they do. Loads of incredible episodes that have come out this month. New episodes go live every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 a.m. UK time. So thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for telling your friends about the Tough Girl podcast. Thank you so much for sharing on social media. It means the world to me. But wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%. Get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon.